Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick.
Southeast Radio.
Well, Enterprise Ireland recently announced its clients' results for 2022, and overall it makes for impressive reading. Here to guide us through the results and to highlight some emerging trends in the area is Martin Corkery, Enterprise Ireland's Regional Director for the South and South East. Martin, at the start of 2023, how would you assess the sentiment amongst Enterprise Ireland client companies?
Good morning, Karl. I think it'll be a really interesting year for the region and for clients in the region. If you maybe just take a step back and we look at 2022 and some of the things we're hearing, it's been, another positive year of outcomes, and I'm sure we'll touch on that over the course of the morning with maybe some results from some recent surveys we've done with clients. But the sentiment, I think, there's no doubt, as we start nearly every year at this stage, while we've come off a really positive year in 2022, there's still some uncertainties there. And there's no doubt we will see some challenges over the course of the year.
And of course, there has been much talk about the avalanche of job losses that have hit the tech sector in recent months. But what is your assessment of these announcements?
You're always concerned around what impact this will have. But there's a question out there, are these organisations right-sizing maybe where they are? And in essence, really, a significant amount of them did a lot of recruiting going back over the last 18 months and are now maybe making some decisions to dampen things down slightly and to be in a position maybe to go again, maybe for the second half of the year. What we're hearing, and I suppose from the talent perspective, we're still seeing significant open opportunities across our client base. So if anything, I think it's a real opportunity for the SME base to maybe pick up some talent that may be in the marketplace. And equally, we probably still see that as our number one challenge from a client perspective, is to be in a position to fill all those roles that are currently available in our industry base across the region.
And Martin, what is Enterprise Ireland doing to assist those client companies that have the challenge of trying to source talent?
So in many instances, we're working with them on a range of strategies. And look, a practical one at the moment is we're running events and information sessions around how to attract in international talent into their companies. And that's both from within the EU and outside the EU. And obviously, when you're outside the EU, there's some more challenges around visa and permits, etc. So we've been working with companies and helping companies to understand the process around it, so they don't make any unintended mistakes that may either delay or disrupt that process.
And as you mentioned earlier, Enterprise Ireland recently announced its results for 2022. But what were the standout figures from last year?
So nationally, I suppose Enterprise Ireland's client base is employing just over 218,000 people across the country, which again is a really positive outcome. And we've seen a growth of 5% in 2022 versus 21, so really positive from that perspective. And if you bring that back down to the Southeast region, again, we have about 340 companies in our client base across the Southeast region, employing just under 22,000 people. And we've seen a big jump in 2022, again, with a 7% growth in the Southeast region. Really positive, and even counties like Wexford have seen an 8% growth. And no doubt, due to companies like your own, Karl, in Chevron and the major expansion plans that you're planning with the acquisition of Aluna in recent days, which is fantastic to see. So companies like yourselves are really, I think that there's a lot of companies across both the county and the region that are really growing and scaling, and thankfully we've seen the benefits out of that and the impact that it has on the employment base.
Thanks, Martin. And typically, which sectors reported the highest volume of jobs growth?
So we've seen a wide variety of sectors growing throughout 2022. And again, I suppose the top performing ones, probably not surprising enough, is companies that are targeting the climate action, sustainability and the agri-tech agenda. We've seen a growth of about 13% in that area. And the other kind of notable sectors where we've seen growth is we've seen in the technology and services sector, we've seen about an 8% growth. And again, in high-tech and construction and housing clients we deal with, we've seen about 6% growth. And other sectors such as digital technologies as well has also had a very positive 9% growth. So in essence, every sector had growth, albeit one or two sectors had some modest growth. But in the main, it is a kind of a diverse basket of sectors really with where we've seen the growth coming from.
So what sectors do you expect to achieve growth in the region over the next 12 months?
I suppose the Southeast has a very strong, I would say, and historically has a very strong manufacturing, engineering and food area. And that will continue to grow. I think we have some really great companies in that area as well. But also as well, we have some really interesting services and technology companies that have been growing year on year. And obviously I touched on your own company there, Karl, and your own plans. And, we see other companies looking at options like that around how they can grow either through growing themselves or maybe through acquisitions, etc. So we see that. But probably the biggest areas, I think, from a national perspective, is where we're likely to see continued growth is in that climate sustainability area where companies are delivering and selling products and services, not just here in Ireland, but internationally. And again, look, there is going to be significant investments made around the world in that as companies and countries look to reduce their carbon footprint, to look at how to become more sustainable. And Irish companies have the track record and the proven history of delivering really innovative products and solutions, that make them really successful both here in Ireland and at the international markets.
And conversely then, are there any sectors that you have concerns for or maybe are underperforming at the present time?
I would say that, and I suppose I can only speak to maybe the sectors that we deal with in that manufacturing and internationally traded sector, looking at it from that lens. I suppose the sectors I think that really need to look at are those that are tighter margins. And some of the food industry, it can be challenged. And I suppose when we look back on Brexit and we still look at Brexit, there are still margins and challenges that will impact their business. And over the last 12 months or even the last 6 months with some of the challenges around energy costs, that too has had an impact on margin. So I think that it's more around businesses that are challenged by margin. And if we get any more shocks around energy shocks and even some supply challenges that might come, they're the sectors and the companies that will get hit the hardest, and it's around being in a position to ride that out. But equally, and I suppose the work we would do with those types of companies is to look and work with them, particularly on the innovation agenda around looking at new products and services that can bring them up and bring additional margin to their business that can allow them ride out any or some of those challenges.
Then from a wider perspective, talk to us about how yourself and your team support your clients in the Southeast region.
We have a very active team on the ground. Thankfully, we've been given additional resources to work with companies, and our focus is we've a major intensified focus over the last 12 months or so in looking to grow the export base across the region. And we're always looking for new companies to meet with that are either have started exporting or may not have exported and are looking to export for the first time. We're very keen to meet with those companies. Again, coming back to my earlier point, we see companies that can export tend to be more resilient when there's times of challenge, and equally companies that go faster and deliver more impact both at a regional and a local area tend to be those companies that have strong levels of exports. And equally, we have offices in 40 locations around the world that can help those companies. But my team on the ground throughout the counties in the southeast are very open and are working with a range of companies across a wide variety of sectors at the moment, but always keen to come across any new and interesting companies. And I'd encourage any companies that might be listening that may not have dealt with Enterprise Ireland, again, jump on the website enterprise-ireland.com, look for our details about our Waterford office and our contact details, but equally talk to your local Enterprise office as well, because we work very closely with them, so you can come in through that door as well if you haven't met or dealt with the local Enterprise offices already. So we work closely, so whatever the right direction is for you, we will work with the right company from that perspective.
And in terms of entering a new market then, Martin, what are the emerging markets that you're seeing at this present time?
In many instances, we will still see the UK as a very strong and probably sensible market in many instances to start with. And even what we are seeing is companies in Northern Ireland using the North as probably a testing ground, and then moving into Scotland, England, Wales as an opportunity. And obviously with Wexford and Rosslare, your access point there makes that readily available, and again we see that as probably the predominant market. The Eurozone then tends to be kind of that initial testing ground then for clients as they grow and expand. And again, it's an area where we look to grow year on year. And again, the role of our overseas offices in growing opportunities has been hugely important there. And I see actually Wexford has just opened, I think the French embassy is looking to put an office in Wexford at the moment again, which indicates maybe the opportunity piece between Wexford and France through Rosslare, etc., and the opportunities that can exist there. And obviously then as companies grow and develop further, the US tends to be a very attractive market from that perspective. And again, a huge amount of opportunities there, but it is an expensive market to go into, so it's not something to do lightly. So that's why we tend to see a lot of the conversations and a lot of the focus we have initially with early stage or first-time exporters is predominantly UK and then typically into the Eurozone as a way of starting to grow, both expertise and equally opportunity.
For those, let's say, that would have a perception now that the UK market is a more difficult market now to enter, what would you say to them?
There is no doubt there is challenges there, but there are probably, and again, this is where our offices play a big role in what they do about, number one, identifying the opportunities, and then the tactics associated with winning business in the UK, and partnering even with UK companies or partnering with other organisations is a sensible approach from that perspective, as well as trying to win direct business. You will find that what we have seen over the last 2 years or 3 years or so, the UK market has also got disrupted because of Brexit with regard to their own supply chain base, and obviously that has an impact of COVID and equally an impact from Brexit from that perspective. But that has brought opportunity. So, when you have disruption in supply chain, you still need to source. And then that's where Irish companies have been really innovative and been really successful in that business. So there is plenty of opportunities there. You may need to maybe bring out the tactics book every now and again to figure out what is the best approach for the sector or the customer base that you're looking at. And again, some of the advice and guidance of our teams on the ground in those markets can really help companies in that situation.
And of course, with the UK leaving Europe, there was lots of talk at the time when Brexit was announced that this would open up massive opportunities for Irish consultancy-based firms and construction companies to actually compete for EU contracts and not have to compete against UK companies. Has that actually transpired?
It depends on the environment that you're looking at, right? If you look at, for example, the data centre construction in the data centre sector, been a huge amount of investment around Europe in the data centre sector. Irish companies have been massively successful in winning business on that. Again, it's probably in the supply chain primarily, and they've been partnering with larger organisations to win that business, but have been hugely successful. And we've seen a lot of growth in that area in that sector across Europe. A lot depends on, I think, the key to winning contracts or large tenders across Europe is IP or really high value added services. If you're competing on margin, you will be challenged, and that's what we tend to see. It's the companies that are really highly innovative products and services or deep IP are the ones that tend to be more successful. But we have seen, typically on the engineering, you touched on the housing sector. Again, really interesting space at the moment. Even in Ireland, to a certain extent, we've been tasked and asked through the government on the Housing for All policy to work with the construction sector around looking to bring more innovation into the construction sector, into the housing sector, and looking to bring kind of leaning that sector. So in essence, really, we can help those companies or support those companies to bring new technologies, bring new services into their business that in essence will build houses faster, that will help solve some of the housing challenges we have at the moment.
And finally then, I had Liam Curran, a colleague of yours from Enterprise Ireland, on the programme with us last August to speak about the Gale offshore network, which is incredibly important here to County Wexford. What's the update on that?
So Liam is doing a wonderful job in that, in fairness to them, and as it's a real passion of his to bring that industry together. So I suppose just to remind people, I suppose that Liam is bringing together a cluster of companies particularly that sub-supply into the renewables industry. And to date, a lot of that has been onshore, but they're really looking at the offshore opportunity coming down the tracks. And I see, obviously, with Mara being formed and based out of Wexford, and I recently heard, I think their new chairperson has been appointed as well, so that's starting to build a bit of momentum. And obviously, coming down the tracks, we'll have some of the auctions in relation to the potential locations for offshore, and that's likely then to probably put the roadmap in place around the future investment required. Obviously, there's still some gaps that need to be resolved around the investments that's required to make, some of these major infrastructure projects a reality. But what Liam is doing and what he's doing for the sector, both here in Ireland, is I suppose as a group and as a cluster, they're showcasing their strengths, both to see what opportunities are existing and will exist in Ireland over the next decade or even the next 2 decades, but equally bringing those, and I know that there's been different visits to different locations both in the UK and in Northern Europe, where showcasing the strengths of Irish companies in that sub-supply place around renewables and helping those companies win new business in those markets. So it's a fantastic initiative. Liam is doing a brilliant job on it. I know he's getting great traction and great buy-in from the companies. I've met several of them over the last few months who've been high praise of what's going on, and equally massive opportunity, albeit I think we need to maybe get to a stage where, those options are completed. We get the roadmap and the pathways in place for the companies that are likely to make that significant investment. And obviously, investment into Rosslare is required as well from a government perspective to make sure that the port is in a strong position to win some of that interesting and those new businesses, and in supporting that renewable technologies and supporting the OEMs that can come in to around, not just for here in Ireland, but equally in other parts across southern and northern Europe.
Well, if you've just tuned in, that was Martin Corkery, the Regional Director with Enterprise Ireland, and I'd like to thank Martin for joining us on this morning's show.
Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick.
Southeast